Reality TV and newscasts are on the broadcast today. Now, this is an interesting subgenre of found footage because it actually has a very long history. In fact, it's one of the oldest forms of found footage. Orson Welles actually began his film 1939's Citizen Kane, one of the most respected films of all time, with a fake newsreel about the main character. And even before that, in 1933, surrealist filmmaker Louis Buñuel made a satire of travelogue films called Land Without Bread. It was a fake documentary and one of the first found footage films ever created. This is a subgenre that troublemaking filmmakers have always loved, because it's fun to make something that looks like something else, but then does something different and unexpected. Going back to Orson Welles, he became famous, and some would say infamous, for his radio broadcast of War of the Worlds, which sounded like a real news radio show, but was actually reporting an alien invasion. That radio broadcast was in the exact spirit of the reality TV and newscast subgenre, because the whole goal is to look like one thing, but act like another. And of course, one of the films that had a similar impact to the War of the Worlds broadcast was 1992's Ghostwatch. But there's a unique example from a few years before Ghostwatch that pioneered the fake news broadcast. And it also played on TV and fooled some viewers into thinking it was real. It was 1983's Special Bulletin, which follows a reporter and cameraman who are taken hostage on the open sea and end up in a nuclear showdown with enemies of the United States. Jump ahead a decade to 1994, and there's another interesting example called Without Warning. It plays like a newscast, interrupting regular programming to notify the public that 3 meteors have hit the United States, and there are more on their way. It's a cool hook and a scary idea, and it works because it feels like a real newscast. But as the 90s ended and the new millennium brought on reality television, found footage films evolved to mimic that new style. One fantastic early example of this is a movie that came out 1 year after the premiere of the first huge reality competition series, Survivor, which came out in 2000. 1 year later brought Series 7 The Contenders. The movie is designed as a marathon of several episodes of a reality series in the near future, where regular people hunt each other to win a TV show contest. The movie was really ahead of its time in predicting a lot of the crazy places that actual reality TV series would go. Now, they haven't created one where people actually murder each other yet, but it might not be that far away. Now, a lot of these fake reality TV found footage films are just variations on ghost hunting shows, which we will cover in more depth in a later season episode on paranormal investigations. However, as actual reality shows expanded into new areas, so did found footage films that were mimicking them. They found unique ways to use reality TV and newscasts to tell scary and surprising stories. Movies like 2010's The Burning Moor Incident and 2016's They're Watching hit on the home renovation craze and took it to some weird and fascinating places. And with Shooting the Warwicks, director Adam Rifkin explored the dark and disturbing lengths that reality TV creators will go to get an entertaining show. The more you dig into this subgenre, the more interesting titles you find. And I think it's because it's just a lot of fun to create ideas like this. A found footage filmmaker can watch an episode of one of those shows on TLC about pregnant moms preparing for the big day, and it makes them think of Delivery, the Beast Within, which takes the same premise and adds a diabolical twist. I believe that's why this subgenre is popular among found footage filmmakers, especially new or first-time filmmakers. Sometimes the framing of the story is the hardest part to figure out. Why are these characters filming all of this? But it makes sense if you're a reality producer or a news crew. No one wants to get the footage more than a camera crew. And it makes the plot of the story easier too, because the first act of the story is clearly modeled in episodes of the news or whichever kind of reality show that you're building from. So that's why I think they're popular for the filmmakers, but why do found footage fans love them so much? So this is where I point out, I think, something interesting. I paired these two kinds of things, newscasts and reality TV. Now, the reason I put them together is because they are both, supposedly, real people talking about real things, but we actually feel opposite ways about them. Local newscasts are generally seen as the most reliable and trusted source of information, while most of us who watch reality TV don't really believe anything that happens on them is entirely genuine. We know it's staged or planned or manipulated, but that's kind of the point. We know the formats of newscasts and reality TV so well, they're almost part of our DNA as TV watchers. That's why we love to see variations that something like horror or science fiction can bring to them. We're entertained by the wonder or the horror elements that have been added to them, but we're comforted by the familiar shape that they take. But anyway, that's just one man's theory. If you want to know more about this subgenre, let's hear from someone who knows an awful lot about it.
Hi, my name's Lesley Manning. Ghostwatch is presented as a light-hearted piece of Saturday night Halloween television live. However, it is a horror film. The inspiration for this piece was television and the power of television in your own home and whether it's actually telling you the truth. There is something that people don't seem to realise even now, decades after I made it. It isn't live. It was shot over a 5-week period and pieced together like a 1,000-piece jigsaw. There are rumours that there are many complaints made about Ghostwatch. Well, the truth is, on the night, the phone lines were jammed. Thousands apparently up and down the country were trying to phone through to the BBC, even though we had manned the phones and put extra people on the phone lines. Not everybody got through. Whether they were complaining or not, I don't know. And yes, it's never been shown again. BBC have never aired it again, although it is out there.
We're back from the break with our local affiliates, and now it's time for some person-on-the-street interviews. Except in this case, these people on the street happen to be very well versed in the world of reality TV and newscast found footage films. So let's hear from some of these experts and superfans in a segment called Found Faculty.
Using the news as a framing device for found footage is brilliant because really, what is the news but a daily found footage television show with added weather? Just capturing the footage of the day, showing it to us and saying, how do you feel about it? I mean, that in its essence is found footage. And what's so beautiful about the framing device is that it's the one subgenre of found footage that still has the ability to potentially fool people. You know, something like Ghostwatch traumatized a generation because they all thought they were really watching an actual news story. It reminds me there was a time I had a coworker who, around the time that Paranormal Activity 3 came out, asked me, "Do you think it's real?" And I responded, in hindsight, probably rather rudely with, no, it's definitely not real, because if actual proof of demons taking over a household was out there, it would be humanity-shaking news. It would be on the news. And I think my favorite thing, at least from a writing perspective, when it comes to news-based found footage, is that just when you think you're out of ideas, you can always refer to, and this just in.
Between the shoot-in of Jeffrey Doucette, the explosion of the Challenger, the murders of Allison Parker and Adam Ward, and the suicide of Bud Dwyer, some of the most horrific images came to Americans first through their television, through the news. They sat down expecting to watch a momentous event, and they saw one, but not the one that they expected. So is it any surprise that the news is a fertile ground for found footage?
The reality TV and newscast subgenre of found footage is probably one of the most ambitious because you're usually not simply dealing with a couple of people and a camera anymore, a la Blair Witch Project. You're not talking screen life, you're talking a TV news studio. You're talking for a reality television show with the attendant crew members and camera crew and, a large cast. And so you're necessarily speaking, more money and resources are needed for this. At the same time, it also stands alongside the killer with a camera subgenre of found footage as one of the most potentially frightening and effective. So if you're able to pull off that found footage newscast, you can really tap into something, especially if it's focusing on these broad cultural fears. It's certainly not a conventional found footage movie, but the War Game, this, I can't even call it a documentary. It's from the 1960s. It was made made in England, and it supposedly documents the lead up to and aftermath of an atomic bomb blast. Years and years later, Threads would be sort of a fictionalized remake of the war game, but the original war game veers up against found footage territory. And nuclear war, nuclear annihilation, even today, that's something that is a broad global fear. And if you can get an audience sitting in front of a TV screen watching a fictional broadcast of a nuclear attack that they think is real, that's Fear City right there.
Hi, I'm Tom Seidman, and I'm the writer, director, producer of the found footage film To Survive. To Survive is supposedly found footage from the pilot of a desert survival reality show. 6 contestants are dropped in the middle of the Mojave Desert, and they have to follow cryptic clues that lead to a $100,000 prize. The fewer contestants that make it, the bigger their share of the money. But of course, the contest quickly goes horribly wrong. The inspiration for To Survive really came from me wondering if you could make a survival reality show where the contestants themselves were the cameramen, sort of like the reality series Alone, though I have to say that To Survive came out the year before Alone was made. I think one of the most innovative things about the film is that most of it was actually shot with helmet cams worn by the actors, like this one. And since all the cameras, the helmet cams, were running for every scene and the actors were looking in every direction, the crew and I had to hide behind rocks or below ridges or even under camouflage netting whenever we shot. We couldn't actually be on the set or we'd be seen in the background.
Boy, this seems familiar, but that doesn't make it bad. It's time to talk about familiar flourishes. So this flourish is one that pops up in a few other found footage subgenres, but it happens here more than it happens in any others because it's actually important in order for these films to be successful. This flourish is what I call Act 1, all good. And this one seems self-explanatory for the name, but hear me out. These stories, the fake reality shows and the newscasts that lead into science fiction and horror stories, they're based on real news programs and real reality show series and types. In order for the big twist to work, you have to spend some time and effort setting up the believability of that other kind of program before you can throw them a curveball. There are some exceptions to the rule where they just throw you in the deep end in a story that's already a wild leap from actual reality. For example, Series 7, The Contenders. They get right to the heart of the story about people hunting and killing each other to win prize money. There's no preparing you for what's coming. But most of the time, they need to establish that they are the thing that they're pretending to be, so that the wild left turn they're about to take is a fun surprise. For example, in Lonely Hearts, a long time is spent establishing the characters who have joined this dating competition show before we ever get the hint that something darker is happening. And the same is true for the WNUF Halloween special, which painstakingly recreates the familiar, almost blandly entertaining tone of a night of broadcast television from the late 1980s, including regionally specific local commercials. In the Andy Baker tape, the characters introduce us to the idea of shooting a Food Network pilot presentation before one of the two characters slowly comes to realize that his co-host may have some troubling issues. The most effective movies that do this will also go one step further. A lot of them will decide to leave clever hints about what is to come, hints that just seem like character moments or exposition and don't seem to be outlandish or creepy at all. But then once the wild left turn kicks in, we suddenly remember back to the moments that telegraphed this element coming. I like those a lot because it makes for a fun rewatch when you go back and you see all the groundwork being laid for unsuspecting viewers. So remember, if you want them to be surprised in Acts 2 and 3, you really have to get them to believe it's legitimate in Act 1. So that's your familiar flourish for reality TV and newscasts. Now let's hear from another outstanding filmmaker from the reality TV and newscast world of found footage film.
Hi, my name is Dominic O'Neill. I'm the writer-director of Haunted Ulster Live. On Halloween night 1998, a local TV station in Belfast investigates paranormal activity in a reputedly haunted house. I've always been a big fan of found footage films and local TV, and I'm old enough to remember seeing Ghostwatch when it was broadcast live in BBC in 1992, and I always thought how interesting it would be to kind of recast Ghostwatch in the 90s in Belfast during the conflict that was going on in Northern Ireland at the time, and to make it like a local TV station investigated. So we were really going for that sort of tone, but maybe with a sort of more light-hearted kind of local TV feel.
We've now arrived in the Lost and Found segment, where we discuss a few of the more popular and well-known titles in the category of reality TV and newscasts. And we also shed some much-needed light on some lesser-known films that deserve some attention. And remember, the point here is to just share the wealth of movies in this category, not to judge people for what kind of films they like. So some of these might be exactly what you're looking for, and some might not. That's fine. Just take the ones you want and leave the rest. Let everyone else enjoy what they enjoy. Now, we're going to start with the more well-known ones. The first movie is one I mentioned briefly earlier, but it deserves a deeper dive. It's 2001's Series 7 The Contenders, from director Daniel Minahan. Like I mentioned earlier, the movie is about a televised competition series where regular people hunt and kill each other in order to win a cash prize. Now, this is probably the first feature-length film to satirize reality TV directly, because aside from MTV's The Real World, most reality TV didn't even start until right at the millennium. This movie has a wicked sense of humor, using the juxtaposition of reality TV with its commercial break bumpers and placing it against very matter-of-fact moments of everyday people shooting each other in convenience stores and public streets. It's a powerful statement, and it only works if you have a powerful central role to hold it all together. Boy, does this movie have that in Brooke Smith, as a previous two-time winner who is playing again at 8 months pregnant in order to have a better life for her child. This is a fantastic movie that I can't recommend enough. It's not super easy to find, but if you can hunt it down, definitely do it. Our next film has become a legitimate modern-day cult film, mostly from the word of mouth, and that is the 2013 film WNUF Halloween Special. The premise of this one is fun. It plays like a news special from a local television channel in the late 1980s, complete with local commercials, awkward newscaster banter, and segments that get fast-forwarded through when they get too boring. This movie is dripping in nostalgia, with its analog style capturing a fun sense of the earlier and less polished days of television. The director Chris LaMartina deserves special credit for making a movie in 2013 that captures the late 80s so perfectly with a budget of only $1,500 for the whole movie. It's a blast from the past that's a blast to watch. Definitely check it out. And our final entry of the more well-known found footage films is probably one of my favorite found footage films of all time. It's Savage Land from 2015. Now, the film plays like an extended episode of 48 Hours, chronicling the shocking death of every resident of a small Arizona border town called Sangre de Cristo, and the potential miscarriage of justice that occurred when the only survivor of the massacre is accused and jailed for the crime. Now, this film perfectly captures the grave tone of those crime news magazine shows. But more than that, this movie has the most effective and eerie use of found media I've ever seen in a movie, as they go through a single roll of film from the night of the massacre, and the blurry black and white images hint at what might have taken place. The movie is a quiet and powerful slow burn, and it has some important things to say about racism and scapegoating. All in all, it's a truly excellent piece of found footage filmmaking. So those are the three more well-known titles in this subgenre. We'll take a quick break to hear from another fantastic filmmaker, and then we'll talk about the lesser-known recommendations.
I'm Jay Lender, and along with my creative partner Micah Wright, I'm the co-writer and co-director of They're Watching. They're Watching is about the crew of a reality show called Home Hunters Global, where Americans go to small-town Europe to find and renovate their dream homes. 6 months later, our crew returns to film the reveal of this particular house, but they run afoul of the locals and end up filming a lot more than they bargained for. Micah and his wife were watching an episode of House Hunters International, which is the show that we're lampooning, and there was this very sweet artist. She was looking for a place in Europe, and she had a jerk boyfriend who obviously didn't want to be there. And at some point in the show, a cat jumps out from behind something and scares the crap out of absolutely everyone. And Micah said to me, I think there's a movie in this. And there was, about selfie culture and ugly Americanism and all of the interesting things that you can do with frogs. So a key scene in They're Watching features our characters walking down into the cellar of the renovated house. But the abandoned building where we were shooting, which was part of a Soviet-era resort in the woods of Snagov, Romania, was built directly on a concrete pad. There was no basement to work with. So for the bedroom set, we built a 6-inch riser and a fake trap door that we could hide a light bulb behind so it would look like there was a down to walk into. And then our characters crouched, pantomiming, walking down the stairs as we pushed the camera into their backs, and then we pulled the camera out again a week later as they walked down the actual stairs into our cellar set, which was built in an apartment building in downtown Bucharest.
Okay, we're back, and it's time to talk about the lesser known or discussed reality TV and newscast found footage films. Next up is a truly wild satire of both Japanese game shows and slasher movies in the 2001 movie Slashers, directed by Maurice Devereaux. The premise is pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Japan's most popular and most dangerous extreme game show is having its first episode starring American contestants, and the name of the game here is simply survival. Try not to get killed by the pantheon of masked killers trying to hunt you down. Now, this movie somehow captures both the glorious gore of a classic slasher movie along with the demented energy of wild game shows like Most Extreme Elimination Challenge. It even kind of has the feel of a dystopian story along the lines of the original Running Man movie. It's just a lot of fun from the director, who has also made some fantastic non-found footage movies, in particular the subway train horror film End of the Line. It's a one-of-a-kind experience that is totally worth having if you can somehow get your hands on a copy. And next up on the list is 2002's My Little Eye from director Mark Evans. The premise is simple. 5 people are offered $1 million to live together in a house in the middle of nowhere for 6 months. The catch, if even one of them leaves, no one gets any money. Now, will they all remain in the house no matter what happens? It's no coincidence that this came out just over a year after the premiere of the popular reality series Big Brother, which has a very similar setup to this movie, minus the more horror and thriller-tinged surprises. You'll definitely recognize some familiar faces in this one, including the go-to That Guy actor from early 2000s, Chris Lemche. Now, the movie was co-written by James Watkins, who would go on, about 5 years later, to write and direct the phenomenal survival horror Eden Lake and the American remake of Speak No Evil. Now, this movie does a great job of slowly turning the screws and getting you invested in the characters. So if you haven't seen it, now is your chance. Now, this next one is a really fun, dark satire on reality TV from a fantastic writer-director who has worked on some huge movies. Adam Rifkin, the Hollywood writer, who was responsible for both Small Soldiers and Mouse Hunt, made this next movie called Shooting the Warwicks. He wrote and directed it, and he's also starring as a reality producer named Mickey Wagner. He's decided to reinvent the reality genre by installing hidden cameras in a family's home without their knowledge. But he quickly realizes that simply watching regular people live their regular lives is kind of boring. So he starts intentionally screwing up their lives in order to create conflict. And the worse it gets for the family, the better it gets for the reality show. This movie does a great job of showing how easily the idea of entertainment can turn dark and manipulative, and how something supposedly innocuous like a TV show can actually ruin people's lives. Rifkin is unexpectedly great in this lead role, and this movie pulls no punches on the industry that it's commenting on. It's available on 3 or 4 different streaming sites, so definitely catch it when you can. And our final of the 5 lesser-known reality TV and newscast movies is the film 8989 Redstone from 2016. This one is about Daryl Masters, the host of a renovation show Mastering Disaster. He's training his daughter to take over his business, but during the filming of the most recent episode at the titular address, some strange things are happening. Now, the first thing I want to say about this movie is that it perfectly captures the very specific vibe and style of home renovation shows on HGTV and other places. The banter, the fakeness of the hosts, even the way they frame some of the shots. It's such a perfect duplication. In full disclosure, I want to say that this movie isn't super scary. It is funny and entertaining, and they do a really good job of combining a home renovation show with a sort of haunted house story. But just don't go into it looking for the kind of scares that you'll get in Hell House LLC, and you'll have a good time. So there we have it. More obscure reality TV and newscast found footage movies. I hope you found a few titles to stream after you're done watching this series. Hey, we're all found footage fans here, right? You wouldn't be watching if you weren't, and I sure wouldn't be making it. So let's take a minute for the recommendations portion of the show related to reality TV and newscasts in our fan favorite segment.
If you like reality TV, newscasts, found footage movies, you've got to watch Late Night with Devil. It's not only a great movie of a terrific lead performance, it's also very strange, very abstract, with lots of surreal imagery. Definitely an Adric abomination, terrifying horror movie with chat show leanings. It feels like a chat show from the 1970s put into movie form. And if that sounds like something which you're a cup of tea, definitely go see Late Night with Devil. Go see it.
If you're jonesing for just one more episode to binge because you don't want it to be over and you want even more recommendations than we covered on this episode, here's the good news flash. If you head over to Letterboxd, you can find a list of 76 reality TV and newscast found footage films. Make a note of the titles that you haven't seen and find out where you can watch them streaming. And as always, if you think of a movie that fits with this category and you don't see it on the list, be sure to let me know about it in a comment and I'll add it to the list so we keep sharing information and the love for this subgenre. Before the end of the episode, let's hear one last time from the awesome filmmakers who took time to share their thoughts and their movies with us. A special thanks to these fantastic movie makers.
Thank you for supporting found footage films.
I'd love for you to check out the film. It's got some amazing shots in it, including helmet cam footage of one of the actors walking off the edge of a 500-foot cliff. I think found footage itself is an amazing genre, and I'm glad that all of you do too.
We're really grateful to how the found footage and horror community has received Haunted Ulster Live. Some people really got into the film, really enjoyed the mystery behind it and the twists and turns that it takes, and we can't wait to make more films for people to enjoy.
The beauty of found footage is that it works so well under a low budget. That puts professional filmmaking in reach for people who can't afford big sets and multiple angles and complicated post-production. When you support found footage, you're supporting new voices and new talent, and with the studios focused on giant tentpole IP, we need that more than ever.
That brings us to the end of the reality TV and newscast found footage films episode. I hope you found some titles that you hadn't heard of or seen, and you're ready to enjoy some more movies. But it's not just the end of the episode, it's also the end of the season. I want to thank you for watching the episodes this season and supporting all of the filmmakers who have shared their films on this show and all of the films that we've discussed. I've got ideas for more episodes about more great found footage subgenres. So if you liked this show and you would like another season, then do me a favor. Leave a positive review on Letterboxd or on IMDb. Recommend it to friends and found footage lovers, and help get the word out. If we see that there's interest in another season, I'll make sure that it happens. And don't forget, today's found footage fan is tomorrow's found footage filmmaker. So go grab your camera and get started, and maybe I'll be talking about your film next time. Thanks for watching.